Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This time we're taking a close look at how medical students actually learn.
Ooh, sounds interesting.
Yeah, so we've got this fascinating excerpt from a medical education resource, and it breaks down all these different teaching methods
Oh, wow.
from traditional lectures
Hmm.
to hands-on experiences, and even, get this, self-directed learning.
Wow, that's a pretty wide range.
It is, and it raises a really intriguing question.
Okay, I'm curious.
Are lectures like going the way of the dinosaurs in this modern age of, all the technology and hands-on stuff, or do they still have a place? What do you think?
Well, it's funny you mentioned dinosaurs because lectures, while they might seem a little bit old school
Yeah.
compared to things like, I don't know, fancy simulations and stuff,
Yeah.
they're still like a fundamental part of medical education.
Okay. Yeah.
Because think about it, lectures are just so darn efficient
Yeah.
for introducing like massive amounts of information really quickly. And let's face it, medicine, there's a lot to learn.
That's an understatement.
Right. And lectures, they also do a good job of kind of bringing together all these complex topics, and they really lay the groundwork for, deeper learning later on.
Okay. So I get how lectures are good for that initial, information download.
Yeah.
But, if we think about Kolb's learning cycle,
Yeah, right.
that four-stage process,
Yeah.
lectures kind of seem to get us stuck in just one of those stages, don't they?
You are absolutely right.
Yeah.
Kolb's learning cycle, it really emphasizes like the importance of going through all those stages.
Yeah.
The concrete experience, the reflective observation,
Right.
the abstract conceptualization, and then the active experimentation.
Right. And it seems like lectures mostly just address that abstract conceptualization part.
You got it,
Right.
where you're like taking in new ideas and information.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you think about it, just listening to a lecture,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like reading a recipe, but never actually cooking the dish.
That's a good analogy.
You've got to actually apply that knowledge, get your hands dirty,
Right.
experiment with it, reflect on what happened to really master it.
That's such a great way to put it. So then how do we get medical students actually cooking with that information they're getting from lectures?
All right.
What are some ways to move them through the rest of those stages in Kolb's cycle?
Well, that's where small group learning comes in.
Ooh.
Imagine you're in a group with your peers.
Yeah.
And you're actively discussing, a tricky case, maybe brainstorming solutions, even role-playing different scenarios.
Uh-huh.
It's way more engaging than just sitting there listening to a lecture, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It sounds like so much more fun.
Right.
You're not just absorbing information. You're actually applying it, working with others, developing those critical thinking skills you need in medicine.
Exactly.
It's almost like, those escape rooms that are so popular now.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You've got to work together, use the clues, think outside the box
Right.
to solve the puzzle.
Yeah. Except here, the puzzle is like a medical case.
Right.
And escaping is figuring out the diagnosis and treatment.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And the benefits go way beyond just problem solving, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You're also improving your communication, learning teamwork,
Definitely.
and getting a much deeper understanding of everything because you're actually discussing it and debating it with others.
You're so right.
And those are skills that, come on, they're valuable anywhere,
Absolutely.
not just medicine.
Yeah, not at all.
So, okay, we've got lectures, building that foundation.
Yeah.
And then small group learning kind of builds on top of that with all that active participation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's talk about problem-based learning, or PBL for short,
Okay.
which, it sounds like it takes things to a whole other level.
It really does.
Like the ultimate escape room almost, right?
Exactly. PBL, it basically flips the script. Instead of starting with a lecture, you start with a real-world problem
Huh?
or a scenario, like a complex medical case. And the students, they work together to figure out what they need to learn to solve it.
So it's all about the problem first.
Yeah. Putting the problem first
Wow.
and giving the students the power to drive their own learning.
So it's kind of like being thrown in the deep end of the pool and having to figure out how to swim.
In a way, yeah. But, there are lifeguards, of course.
Right.
The facilitators are there to guide things.
Of course.
But the emphasis is really on the students taking charge.
I like that.
And this approach, it really aligns with, everything we know about how people learn best
Yeah.
by, actually struggling with challenges, going out and finding the information they need, and then actually using it in real-world situations.
It makes sense when you put it that way.
And this brings us to a super interesting detail from our source material.
Okay, I'm listening.
Hardin's PBL continuum.
Hardin's PBL continuum.
Yeah, have you heard of it?
No, tell me more.
Okay, so basically it describes this whole spectrum of PBL approaches,
Okay.
ranging from like problem-oriented learning to, cure PBL.
Gotcha.
So on the problem-oriented end, lectures are still part of it,
Right.
but they're like supplemented with practical examples and case studies.
Oh, interesting.
And then on the pure PBL end, it's all about problem solving from the very beginning.
So no lectures at all.
Not really, no. Like, students might be given a patient case,
Okay.
and then they have to go and research everything
Wow.
from the anatomy and physiology to the diagnosis and treatment options.
That's intense.
It is. They have to figure out what's going on, basically.
So some PBL programs are kind of like dipping your toes in the pool.
Right.
And others are like full-on cannonball.
Exactly.
But I'm guessing there are like pros and cons to both approaches.
Absolutely. Our source actually cites this research by Coe,
Okay.
which found that PBL has a really positive impact on teamwork,
Okay.
social and emotional awareness, and like the ability to deal with uncertainty.
Oh, that's interesting.
But, and here's the trade-off,
Yeah.
it might not be the best way to teach purely technical skills,
Oh.
where, repetition and practice are really key,
So like it's not a magic bullet then.
right?
PBL is great for certain skills.
Yeah.
But maybe not so much for others.
Exactly. So imagine you're a medical student
Oh.
trying to decide between a traditional program
Right.
and one that's like super heavy on PBL.
Yeah.
Coe's research suggests that you'd probably do really well with PBL when it comes to like teamwork and those super complicated cases.
Okay.
But you might need some extra training when it comes to like the hands-on stuff.
Yeah.
Like suturing or intubation, which need tons of practice.
Makes sense.
Right.
That's incredibly helpful. It really highlights how important it is to like understand the strengths and weaknesses of each approach.
Totally.
So where does PBL fit into this whole active versus passive learning debate?
Oh, that's a good question.
We've like touched on it a bit,
Right.
but I'd love to like dive in a little deeper.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, PBL is a really great example of active learning,
Oh, yeah.
Instead of just passively sitting there and taking in information, students are actively going out and seeking knowledge and analyzing stuff and applying it to real-world problems.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between just watching a documentary about a city
Uh-huh.
and actually going there and exploring it yourself.
Oh, I like that.
You just get a way deeper understanding when you're actively involved.
Right.
Yeah.
So if traditional lectures are like watching that documentary,
Yeah.
PBL is like going on an adventure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And because you're so engaged, you're more likely to like really process that information and remember it longer.
That makes sense.
Remember Kolb's learning cycle?
Yeah.
PBL hits all those stages. It makes sure that knowledge really sticks.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how PBL really pushes those boundaries of traditional medical education. But even with all this problem solving and active learning, hands-on experience is still super important in medicine, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So how does that fit into all of this changing world of medical education?
You're right. Hands-on experience is crucial, and there are like different levels to it,
Right.
each addressing those different stages of Kolb's cycle.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So you've got observational experiences
Yeah.
like shadowing a physician or going on community placements where you're mainly absorbing information
Mm-hmm.
and observing how things actually work in the real world.
Okay.
That's like the concrete experience and reflective observation stages of the cycle.
Right. So it's about getting a feel for the environment,
Yeah.
seeing how things actually work in a real clinical setting.
Exactly. And then you have active experiences
Yes.
like clinical rotations or electives
Right.
where you're actually doing stuff, participating in patient care.
Hands-on.
Yeah. Under supervision, of course.
Right. Of course.
And that's where you move into that active experimentation stage. Actually applying what you know and your skills in real situations.
Gotcha. So it's kind of a progression
It is.
from watching to doing,
Yes.
from shadowing to like scrubbing in, so to speak.
Precisely. And our source actually talks about Schoen's framework.
Schoen's framework.
Yeah, it outlines 3 levels of professional practicum experiences.
Okay. 3 levels.
First, you've got the knowing in action level,
Knowing in action. Right?
where you're mostly following instructions and using skills you already learned.
Okay. So that's like those early stages of a clinical rotation
Yeah.
when you're still figuring things out and relying on what you learned in the classroom.
Exactly. Then you move into reflection in action.
Reflection in action.
This is where you start running into unexpected situations.
Oh.
You have to think on your feet,
Mhm.
you know, adapt your knowledge, and make decisions in real time.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure.
It is. It's like hitting a detour on a road trip.
Yeah.
You got to change your plan and find a new route.
Okay, I see that.
Right.
So that's when the real learning kicks in.
It is. When you're forced to think critically and solve those problems right there on the spot.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. And finally, you reach the reflection on action level.
Reflection on action.
Okay, this is where you step back and think about everything that happened.
Uh-huh.
You figure out what went well, what could have been better, and how you can use those lessons for next time.
Oh, that's smart.
It's that crucial reflective observation stage of Kolb's cycle coming full circle.
I like how Shokin's framework ties back into Kolb's cycle.
Right.
It shows how important it is to really think about those experiences
Yeah,
and learn from them.
definitely.
It's not just about going through the motions,
Right.
but really understanding what happened and why.
Exactly.
But what about those medical students who are like really driven, the ones who want to go above and beyond the regular curriculum?
Yeah.
They're hungry for more knowledge.
Mm.
Can they take charge of their own learning?
They absolutely can. That's where self-directed learning comes in.
Self-directed learning.
Or SDL for short.
Okay, DL got it.
It's about giving students the power to be in charge of their own learning journey.
Oh, wow.
Figuring out what they need, setting their own goals, and finding the resources and experiences that match those goals.
So it's like creating your own personalized medical school.
It's kind of like that, yeah.
That's so cool.
It is. Choosing your own electives, going deeper into areas that really interest you.
Yeah.
Really owning the whole experience.
That's that.
Our source talks about how SDL is perfect for those learners who are super motivated and want to be in control of their education.
It makes sense.
It lets them focus on what they need right now and explore things that aren't covered in the regular curriculum.
That's awesome. So imagine you're a med student and you're passionate about global health.
Mm-hmm.
With SDL, you could volunteer abroad,
Yeah.
connect with experts,
Totally.
even design your own research project.
Exactly. You could explore a specific global health challenge.
That's incredible. SDL really lets learners tailor their education to their passions.
It does.
But are there any downsides to this?
That's a good question.
What if students get overwhelmed by all the information out there
Yeah.
or go too far off track from the core curriculum?
That's a valid concern for sure.
Yeah.
While SDL gives you tons of freedom and flexibility,
Right.
it also needs a lot of self-motivation, discipline, and organization.
Oh, for sure.
Our source points out that SDL might need a lot of guidance, especially for students who are new to this whole approach.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
It's important to have that support, to make sure that SDL is actually effective and lines up with the overall learning goals.
So it's kind of like having a compass and a map
Yeah,
while you're exploring new territory.
exactly.
You can choose your own path,
Mm-hmm.
but you still have tools to help you navigate
Right.
and make sure you're on the right track.
Exactly. And this leads us to the bigger picture of how medical education is changing,
Okay.
where technology is becoming more and more important.
Right.
Our source mentions things like e-learning, blended learning, and simulation-based teaching.
Mm.
These are just a few examples of how technology is totally changing the game.
Wow, it's like having med school in your pocket.
Kind of. Think about it. You can watch lectures online,
Uh-huh.
take part in virtual simulations,
Wow.
even work with other students on the other side of the world.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But with all these cool new tools, how do we make sure they're being used the right way
Right?
to actually help students learn, not just replace the old methods?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right.
It's easy to get caught up in all the excitement of new technology, but our source makes a really good point.
What's that?
Effectiveness depends on good design, not just using the newest tech because it's shiny and new.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. For instance, online lectures can be great for making information accessible to more people,
Right.
but they need to be designed in a way that keeps students involved and encourages them to actively learn.
So it's not just about putting a lecture online and calling it e-learning.
Exactly. You need to think about making it interactive, adding quizzes and discussions, and making sure students are really thinking about the material.
Right. Right.
And this is true for all types of technology-enhanced learning.
Yeah.
Take simulation-based teaching, for example.
Okay.
It's super helpful for practicing procedures and decision-making in these realistic scenarios,
Mm-hmm.
but it works best when it's part of the curriculum in a way that complements other learning methods.
Our source specifically mentions simulation-based teaching.
Yeah,
I have to admit that one sounds particularly cool.
it is pretty cool.
Can you give us an idea of what that looks like in action?
Sure. So imagine like a flight simulator,
Oh, yeah.
but for doctors,
Well,
They can practice like landing the plane
Right.
without, risking a crash.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
It gives students a safe place to make mistakes and learn from them and build confidence.
That makes sense.
It's especially helpful for procedures that are high risk
Yeah.
or need lots and lots of practice to get right. Like, picture yourself practicing a complex surgical technique, but on a virtual patient. And you're getting feedback from a computer program.
Okay.
And you can do it over and over again until you feel good about it.
Yeah, until you're comfortable and you know you can do it.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Right.
But even with all this high-tech stuff,
Yeah.
the human element is still super important in medicine, right?
Absolutely. That's where mentorship comes in.
Mentorship.
Our source talks about how important it is to have like a more experienced guide,
Yeah.
someone who can give advice, share their insights, and provide support, as you're going through all the challenges of medical training.
Right, because it's a tough journey.
It is.
So it's like having a seasoned explorer
Yeah.
by your side as you venture into uncharted territory.
Precisely. And a good mentor can help you develop not just your clinical skills, but also like your professional identity, your values, how you approach patient care.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
Right. They can challenge you to think differently, ask tough questions, and push you outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, to grow.
It's like having a coach who helps you train for a marathon,
Okay.
not just by telling you what to do, but by motivating you and supporting you.
Being there for you.
Yeah, and helping you believe in yourself.
Mentorship sounds so valuable.
It is.
But our source also mentions something called Objective Structured Clinical Examinations.
Yes, OSCEs.
OSCEs. Okay, they sound pretty intense.
They can be, yeah. So picture a series of stations.
Okay.
Each one focuses on a specific skill.
Like what?
Taking a patient history, performing a physical exam, or talking to a patient about a difficult diagnosis.
Oh, wow. Those are all tough.
They are.
Yeah.
And students go through these stations showing what they can do while being watched and scored by trained examiners.
So being judged.
Kind of, yeah. It's like a series of mini performances,
Interesting.
each one showing a different part of clinical competence.
So it's a way to test those practical skills in a controlled environment.
Exactly. Like how musicians have auditions or athletes have tryouts.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I get it.
OSCEs help make sure that all medical students are graduating with the same level of skill in those core areas.
Makes sense.
It's like a benchmark, a way to measure progress and see where someone might need more training.
Right, right. That's really smart.
Yeah, and our source also talks about direct observation of procedural skills, or DOPS.
DOPS. So is that basically just watching students do procedures?
It's more than just watching. DOPS involves a trained observer who's right there watching the student do a procedure, giving them feedback and guidance in real time.
Wow, so they're getting coached.
Yeah, imagine having a coach right there with you, analyzing your every move,
Okay.
pointing out what you could do better and helping you improve step by step.
So it's like having a personal trainer, but for your surgical skills.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it is.
And speaking of personalized feedback,
Yeah.
our source mentions mini clinical evaluation exercises.
Mini CEX.
Or mini CXs. Yeah, those seem to focus on actual patient encounters.
They do. Mini CEX are a way to check clinical skills, but in a real-world setting.
Okay.
So picture this. A supervisor observes a student interacting with a real patient for a short time and then gives them feedback right away.
Oh, wow. So it's immediate.
It is. It's like a snapshot assessment focusing on a specific skill or part of patient care.
So it's less about a formal exam
Right.
and more about taking advantage of those teachable moments.
Yeah. When they're actually working with patients.
It's cool.
And because it's happening in the real world, it takes into account all those little details and complexities of actual patient care.
Yeah, you can't really recreate that in the simulation.
Exactly. Those real-world assessments show us how important it is to connect what students learn in the classroom with what they do in the clinic.
Right, to bridge that gap.
Yeah,
We've talked about a lot of different teaching and assessment methods,
we have.
but it seems like they all have something in common.
What's that?
They're all moving towards more active, learner-centered approaches.
You're absolutely right. Medical education is changing.
Yeah,
It's not just about stuffing information into students' heads anymore.
right.
It's about helping them develop a whole set of skills, attitudes, and values.
Makes sense.
It's about training doctors who are not only good at what they do,
Yeah.
but are also adaptable, empathetic, and able to handle the ever-changing world of healthcare.
It's like the difference between training a robot to do surgery
Right.
and training a human being to actually care for another human being.
Exactly. And this shift is clear when you look at the focus on active learning and problem solving and self-directed learning and mentorship.
Yeah.
All these things help students become active participants in their own education and professional development.
It's pretty amazing to see how medical education is changing,
It is.
becoming more well-rounded, more integrated, and really focused on preparing students for what it's actually like to be a doctor in the 21st century.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And remember, everyone listening,
Yes.
these principles go way beyond medicine.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether you're learning a language or playing an instrument or just trying to grow as a person, the key is to be an active part of your own learning journey.
I agree.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive into the world of medical education.
It has.
We've learned so much about how medical students learn and what the future holds for how doctors are trained.
It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you.
Likewise, and to all of you listening, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to keep learning and growing.
Keep asking questions and exploring.
Keep diving deep.